Hi, is anybody out there? Just checking to see if anybody's there. My audio's working and video and all that good stuff. Hey, Devery, can you hear me? Hey, Dev. Good to see you. I got your note. I'll try not to drop the F-bomb too many times. I never know. I can't guarantee anything. Hi. Gichimakwa Smith is here in the house. The bear is in the house. So, Chamakwa, I'm going to start right at 7 o'clock. Hey, Devery, did you notice the hat I have on? Hi, Paulette. How cool is that? My cousin's here from San Francisco. Can you guys hear me okay? I need some feedback. Can you guys hear me all right? Send me a quick note. Okay, good, Dev. Thank you. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I want to start on time if we should do that, or maybe I should wait a little bit. What did I do with my clock? I'm going to set my clock. Hey, Marlon. Good to see you. Yeah, I don't know how you guys do the comments. I think there's a event log or something like that, where you can shoot me questions if you want. Um, I have some questions. I'm going to start. My name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic and an old doper, and I just want to say thanks to Dev. I want you to notice, you guys up there in Red Lake, I want you to notice my hat. And I'm going to take it off so you can see my white hair. All you Red Lakers up there, go to college. You got a great professor up there named Devery Fairbanks. Nice guy, too. My name's Tom Kanthak, and I live in Golden Valley, Minnesota. And Marlon talked to me last week, Saturday, Sunday, like something like that, and said, "Tom, would you be willing to be part of the Friday night speaker meeting?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to. I feel honored. There's some pretty heavy hitters from this group that's been on with Don and Cheryl. And Cheryl, you were awesome, man. You just blew me away. And Devery, of course, you were wonderful. And Ralph last week. And I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody. But I feel like I'm in pretty good company. It's set the bar pretty high. So I'm going to try to do the best I can. And again, I want to say thanks. And I love you guys. And you've been a really important part of my recovery. And so I'm honored to be part of your group. Um, there's a I've gotten to know a wise old uh, Indian medicine man. His name's Marlon, and we were talking one day about what our stories disclose in a general way, what we were like, what happened, and what it's like now. And he said, "Well, Tom, there's three other questions that are pretty important too, and help put things in perspective." And he said that's the three questions are who, why, and where. And so I'm going to kind of organize things. I'm an old teacher, and so I've got to organize my thoughts, and the simpler the better. So I can handle three questions um, in two different frameworks. Uh, so the first question is, who am I? The second question is, why am I here? And the third question is, where am I going? And that kind of parallels a lot the questions from the big book, which is, what was it like, what happened, and what it's like now. And so I'm going to kind of try to organize things around those three questions. And if you have questions, apparently you can text me while I'm talking, and I'm up for that. I'm an old teacher, so I'm used to getting a lot of questions, some of which I can only pretend to answer. So who am I? Like I said, my name's Tom. I'm an alcoholic and an old doper. Um, I'm I'll be 71 years old in a couple of weeks on the 15th of May. Um, I'm I'm married. I have a wonderful wife who I met when I was 7 years sober, and we have a beautiful home in Golden Valley, Minnesota. 3-bedroom rambler. Never thought I'd live in something so conventional, but it's beautiful. It's a wonderful place to live. Um, I'm a almost retired teacher. My teaching license expires at the end of the month, and I don't think I'm going to renew it. So this is sort of an official announcement of my retirement. I don't think I'm going to go back in the fall. I was substitute teaching for a while at a big school here in Minneapolis, and now with the I'm not teaching anymore, and I really miss it. I miss it a lot. I was the founding teacher of an arts high school here in Golden Valley. We started up in about 1988, and it was a it was an incredible job. It was an unbelievable job, and I lost that job to layoffs. So, geez, I don't know what was that, 2012 or something like that. So I went into substitute teaching for a while, and now I think I'm gonna quit doing that. Um, see, who else am I? I'm a good Catholic boy from St. Cloud. I was a choir boy, an altar boy, a child prodigy on the pipe organ, and grew up in that uh, very structured um, religious family. And I have an older brother who's a year and 13 days older than me. His birthday's tomorrow. I have my next youngest sister, who's also a teacher, and my little baby sister, Julie, who lives and teaches in a Western suburban school here and has been there a long time. And we're all teachers. My grandfather was a teacher. My great grandmother was a teacher in a little one-room schoolhouse out in western Minnesota. And so I don't know what your feeling is about teachers, but get over it. Anyway, oh, my cousin Kathleen is here too. And so who am I? That's part of my story. Is that I I I grew up in a family of alcoholics. My whole the whole culture of our family was not the whole culture, but I mean, whenever we got together, the adults drank, and no, I don't remember there being any big knockdown, drag out fights and all that sort of thing. But uh, I do remember that it was important to have that case of beer around, and my uncles and my dad and the whole crew would um, get together. And when we got together, it was fun. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughing. You know, it was good yucks. Um, uh, I was born in a little town called Cambridge, Minnesota, and one of my earliest memories of drinking was at the VFW, the American Legion in Cambridge, Minnesota. I must have been 4 or 5 years old. Um, and my brother and I were like little puppies around my dad. We'd be sitting there begging him to take sips off of his long neck beers. So that's but what was uh, uh, memorable about that is that um, my dad was laughing and dancing and having a great time. It was drinking and having a good time, and seeing my folks happy, um, all went together, and that from a very early age. And that's just the way it was. Um, many of my cousins who happen to be here um, uh, are or were alcoholics. Some of them died alcoholics. My uncle, uh, Bob, was an alcoholic and died in the Wilmer State Hospital. Um, well, the second question is, why am I here? Well, I'm here because I drank too much. I mean, it's pretty simple. All of this stuff that's happened to me in the last 37 years is because I drank too much. Um, I think I think now that it was a gift that was given to me. Um, and so why I'm here is to share with you my experience, strength, and hope in recovery. And uh, I, it's an important thing for me to do because I was given so much and continue to be given so much. And I want to thank all of you for all of that you've given me. Um, the the other reason I'm here, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, is that uh, why am I on the Red Road Warriors uh, Facebook page? I have a long association, a sober association with sober Indians from the very get-go, from the very beginning of when I started getting sober. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But I I find the most honest, genuine, and sincere um, recovery people in recovery in the Native community. Not that my wonderful Thursday night men's AA meeting, the Serenus meeting, isn't a sincere group of people, because they are, and that's why I've been with them for 35, 36 years. And we just had a meeting last night, and I'm really so grateful that we're able to get together, even though it's on a limited sort of basis. It's very, very important for me to connect with people who have been with me in my sobriety from practically day one. My sponsor, my second sponsor, actually was in the Serenus group, and he's gone now. But so here I am on the Red Road Warriors site, and the the reason that I'm here is because I've was given the gift of a friendship in AA with an Indian guy by the name of George Earth. He was my good friend and my adopted brother. He adopted me and gave me my 25-year medallion. Um, and when I finally walked into the Squad 17 at 2218 in August of 1983, I walked up the stairs, and there was my not sponsor, Retha, and the guy who 12-stepped me, John Munger, who's now gone, um, and um, and Bob, and George. And George and I would sit in AA meetings together, and he was new in sobriety as well. We almost shared the same date of sobriety, and but he'd just recently gotten out of Stillwater prison, and was living underneath I think it was the Franklin Avenue or Third Avenue bridge, and he had still had that big nose, that big whiskey nose, and I would sit next to George, and he would talk, and I would listen, and be undone, and I what he was saying, what was coming out of his mouth, was the kind of things that I only hoped that I could be and do and come to as a person. Um, George was an very instrumental part of my life, and he was honored as the hereditary chief of White Earth Indian Reservation. His grandfather was Chief Wawiyikomik back at the turn of the 20th, 19th, 20th century there. And so that's 35 years ago that George and I would sit in meetings together, and I really wanted what he had, and we struck up a friendship. And he took me to my first powwow at White Earth in 1984, and I met his family and ended up being adopted into his family, and I'm forever grateful for that. Um, but one of the reasons I'm here is because George, towards the end of his life, probably 15 years ago, if not more, said to me, "Tom, you're a teacher. I want you to write a book for me about me and my life and as an Indian, a full-blood Indian from White Earth, and because the culture and the language and the ceremonies are dying, and I want you to preserve them from my perspective as a native recovering man." So I said, "Well, George, geez, I'm a teacher, but I don't write books. I mean, I just don't write books, but I'll do what I can." And I started out by doing some interviews with George. Those audio interviews are available online. I can let you know where those are if you're interested. Um, and I said, what I'll do is I'll sit down with you and you can start telling me your story. And we did, and that was sort of the beginning um, of my um, entry into. Well, it wasn't the beginning. I mean, the beginning was in '84, and I started interviewing him, and about 15 years ago, and uh, so we never arrived at a place where I actually wrote a book about George, but I did spend a lot of time with him, stay with him. We went to meetings, a lot of meetings, Red Lake, Black Duck, Bemidji, White Earth, and uh, so what happened was that as a teacher, I was able to uh, develop a curriculum and an elective at the school that I was teaching at that the kids could take. It was called Minnesota Indian Art and Aesthetics, and a second course in Native American art and culture. Um, and I was able to do that because of the people that like George, who I met along my journey in recovery. Um, Native people who helped me understand and learn about what it means to be native and sober. And it was so much what I wanted um, in terms of my own sobriety in my own life that I developed these courses and taught and did some presentations and things at the uh, Indian Education Association and stuff and all that good stuff. So I was able and brought George down to the school to do workshops with the kids and talk with them. And I tried to get as much uh, of I tried to get George to pass on to the kids as much as he could firsthand, first source, information. And it was wonderful to see him with those kids who were primarily white kids, uh, but also resonating with the native kids that we had. And we did have some native kids come down from the res and study with us for a couple of years. But anyway, I want to back up a little bit. Uh, so what was it like when I started this whole thing? Well, I the night before August 18th, 1983, I called up an old friend of mine who I studied dance with. Yep, I'm a dancer and a musician and a composer, and I called him up because my wife said if I went to treatment, she'd come back to me, and so I thought, well, yeah, what the hell, might as well. So I called John up, and John had him, or he, John had his sponsor call me, and Bob, my first sponsor, Bob Mead, who's gone now too, um, was a volunteer up at the VA hospital in St. Cloud, and so I answered the phone, believe it or not, and Bob and I talked for a while, and he, he he said an amazing thing to me, because I knew what you AA people were about, and I didn't like you. I didn't like you at all. I got a DW in 1977, and they made me go to those goddamn AA meetings, and I hated you guys. And I'd get in my truck and pop a beer and drive down to Palmer's Bar in the West Bank, because so I knew about this AA thing, and so I was a little leery about talking to some guy I'd never met before, some vet. So anyway, he called me up, and he said an amazing thing to me. He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm all right." And he said, "You been drinking today?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been drinking all day." He said, "How much you got left?" I said, I don't know. I got about, I don't know, maybe three cans of beer if I'm lucky." He said, and this is the amazing thing he said to me, because then I knew that he knew. He said to me, "Well, listen, you finish those off and meet me up at the Clearwater truck stop tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and I'll take you up. I got a bed for you up at the VA hospital. I was able to get one for you. So you come on up." And so I did. Um, but the amazing thing was that he said to me, he didn't tell me to flush him down the toilet. He said, "You finish him up." He knew what I needed. So uh, that was my first sort of enlightenment into what um, what it means to be connected to another alcoholic. So I went up to VA and I did my 28 days up there. Those wonderful people up there at the VA hospital back then, Joanne Pari and Bud Anderson, Bullshit Bud, we called him, because, we'd be in group together and somebody would start spewing some crap, and Bud had come up over in his chair and go, "Bullshit." So that's how Bud got his name. And I learned about rationalization and lying, and the need to be honest, about being honest about where I was, because at one point in time I was blabbering on about how I drank so much because of my wife, and the next door neighbor's dogs killed two of our cats, and blah 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 blah, and bullshit. But he said, "Tom, you're here because you drank too much. We don't have anybody here at the VA hospital in Building 2 in the treatment program, the Group 6 feelings group, because somebody's neighbor's dogs killed their cats. They're here because they drank too much." So anyway, getting back to that. So I did 28 days at the VA hospital, and uh, interestingly enough, I had a Native friend um, in that group, in that Group 6, and he left early and left all of his stuff behind. And I got a letter from his wife. He went back up on the res, got a jug, and went out in the woods and killed himself. I liked him. I really liked him a lot. And the hardest part was, you know, boxing up his shoes and his clothes and stuff so that his wife could come and pick up his stuff. That was hard. Um, but I learned a lot from him too about how to be connected, sober, even though he didn't make it. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. So anyway, I went through the VA hospital with those wonderful people up there, saved my life, and they said, Tom, we think maybe instead of going back to your little house on Powderhorn Park, where you're behind 3 months on the mortgage, maybe you should go over to the halfway house in River Falls. And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't want to do that. And they said, no, if you want to finish this program, you got to go over there and do your fourth and your fifth step because you only made it up to your third step. Um, so I did. I spent 3 months in the halfway house. I was only supposed to be there 30 days, and I begged them to extend my time there because it was so awesome. And um, and then I moved back to Minneapolis and ended up at 2218 and Squad 17 Friday night. But of course, I ended up having a crazy roommate there, and he did an amazing thing one time. I was trying to do a fourth step there, which is the inventory step, where you kind of write down, um, what happened and what it was like and what it's like now, um, and also, use the sex, security, and self-esteem. The three S's. That's all I can remember is three things. And so I did that, but I failed the first time I did a fourth and a fifth step because I think the guy who did the fifth step with, which is the step where you go and you admit to God, to yourself, and to another human being the exact nature of your wrongs. I went 6 hours I spent with Jules, and he finally said, "No, I think this is not working, and maybe we better start over, and I'll do it with you." So I thought, well, I need some help. So I went to my roommate Bud. I said, "Hey, Bud, this fourth step, the fifth step thing didn't go very well. Can you tell me what's wrong with me? What I should be putting down in my fourth step?" And he started talking about himself and what kinds of things came up for him in his fourth step in his inventory, and and it was some pretty personal, deep stuff, and it was at that point in time that I realized that Bud had the courage and the willingness and the honesty and the openness. Did I say that already? Openness to share with him something some things that were very, very personal. And that gave me permission to do it as well. So I went back and did my fourth step and sat down with Jewel, and we made a lot of progress at that first fifth step that I took. And and then and then I went out in the there was a place that I would stay at on the Kanthak River, which is right near River Falls, Wisconsin. And I went out there by myself, like they tell you to in the big book, and I was laying there in the sun, all by myself. And this may sound weird, but this little bird came and landed on a tree branch right above me, and this amazing thing happened where I had an intense feeling of being so connected to that little bird. He was singing to me, to that little bird, that I could hear his heartbeat and I could hear my own heartbeat. And I realized uh, at that point in time that I had had a spiritual experience. I had entered into the unseen world through this little bird, and I understood, and I felt an understanding and an intense connection with all of the things around me. And man, oh man, I drank to a point where I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning naked, totally drenched, wet. I don't know if I'd pissed the bed or if it's sweat. And and I was in this state of nightmare where I was in intense pain, psychic and physical, shaking, pain. And I realized that I had uh, drank as much as possible, and still the pain wouldn't go away. And I knew I was screwed then. And I also knew that I was completely disengaged from the rest of the world. And so that experience of connecting to that little bird gave me a glimmer of hope that I wasn't alone, and that I wasn't lonely, um, and that some of that that deep dark black hole inside of me was starting to fill up through these connections that were starting to happen with George and my roommate Bud, and uh, the great, wonderful connections that I had with the VA hospital. And uh, so anyway, I went back to Minneapolis and got really involved in AA. I didn't take to it right away. I sort of had to kind of sit on the fringes for a while to get over this whole business about how crazy and you people were, and how much I didn't like you, and how much you weren't like me, please. And it's just uh, my thinking changed over the course of being in those rooms, from listening to what you had to say to find out how you were different than I was, to listening for what you said that was like me. And um, what happened was that in listening, I heard things like, well, there's a difference between religion and spirituality. And I went, oh, wow, that gives me a lot of room. I can do this. I can do this, you know. I don't know if I've got it handy or not, but if you look on November, I think it's November 12th in the Black Book, the One Day at a Time book. I think it's November 12th. And this is the first thing I ever purchased on my own with my own money in the halfway house in River Falls, because I went to my counselor Bob, and I said, Bob, what is this God shit? Does that mean I gotta pray? And he looked at me and he went, well, Tom, it can't hurt. And okay, that I could take, that I could handle. And so I bought the book, and you know, this is that God touch crap that they talk about in AA. So I open it up, and the prayer for the day is, I pray that I may send my voiceless cry for help out into the void. I pray that I may feel certain that it will be heard somewhere, somehow. That I can do. That I can do. Um, and So going back to sitting in those rooms and hearing this thing about there's a difference between religion and spirituality, I would I'd sit there and I'd listen, and I would go, in my head I was arguing and and putting up an argument for what you were saying. No, in my head I was doing all of this. So I wasn't really listening. What I was doing was building an argument and figuring out what I was going to say when it came around to my time to say something. And what switched was that I had an awareness, I had an awakening about the fact that I wasn't Bizandan. I wasn't listening. I was building an argument. And so when I first started practicing my third step, which is made a decision to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself, what I would do is I'd sit in that circle and I'd listen to you guys talk. And instead of building an argument, I would just listen. No arguing, no preparing what I was going to say. I'd just listen. And I realized in doing that I left an opening for messages to come to me. That this voiceless cry into the void, I realized that something was actually listening to me, because I, long time ago, realized and decided that there might be a God out there, but he sure as shit doesn't listen to me. And he's got nothing to say to me. And so what I realized is that I was connected to all those people in that circle, in that room. And when I listened to them, I realized I was hearing from them a lesson and something that I needed for myself. But I had to make the opening. I had to stop arguing, stop preparing. And it was in that practicing that third step in every meeting, every one, with every person, made a decision to turn my will over. Let it go, Tom. Just listen. Let go. Let God, the God of my understanding, now called the Great Spirit of the Creator, which is another whole story. But anyway, so what I started to realize is that I was connected to these people, and that there was a little piece of God in each one of those people. And if I listened, God would speak to me. And I'll take that. I'll take it. Um, it works for me. It still works for me. Quite a while later. Um, and where do I want to go with this? So anyway, I started practicing these steps, even though I knew it was all bullshit. I tried it anyway. I just gave it I figured, what the hell, it can't hurt. My life was so screwed up the way it was. I didn't say the F-bomb, Debbie. My life was so screwed up the way it was. Maybe you guys could help me out. So I started doing the steps. And one of the reasons I'm still here in AA is because of a promise that I made to my old boss. I was a bartender on the West Bank, Cedar Avenue in Minneapolis, for quite a few years. I knew lots of people who drank on the West Bank, and the dance studio where I studied and taught at was right next door. So it was really convenient. I could teach dance classes and go over there and tend bar after I got done teaching. And so anyway, when I came around to doing a ninth step, I went to my boss and I arranged for a time for us to meet, and we sat down and I started talking, and I explained to him that I was trying to do my best to stay sober, and that I was in the AA program, and that part of what we had to do in the AA program, it was part of our spiritual development, and our sobriety was to sit down with people who we had harmed and make amends to them. And so I went on my whole thing. I talked with Roger about that. I said, Roger, I stole a lot of money from you. I drank all your, a lot, not all. Mo- uh, I drank a lot of booze and gave a lot of it away. And I said, Roger, I have no idea how much money I owe you or how you want me to. I can set up a payment plan with you and whatever. But I just wanted to let you know that I wanted to make amends for that. Um, and he looked at me. This is so unbelievably amazing. He looked at me, and I don't know that he was conscious of what he said that made so much of an impact on me. But he said, Tom, listen, I don't know. I don't know how we're ever going to work this thing out with you paying me back or any of that shit. And I don't even know if that's going to happen. But what I do want you to do is prove to me that this AA thing that you're doing actually works. Because he said, from my perspective as a bartender, this program does not work that you're talking about. This AA thing doesn't work. Because every week somebody comes in after being in treatment or walking in and saying, give me a Coke. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm in the AA program. Um, he said it's not very long before they're back in here and they're plastered. So from my perspective, this thing that you're involved with, this AA thing, does not work. So prove to me it does work. So I go to meetings. I have a sponsor and not sponsor. Um, and I have a sponsee, a wonderful sponsee, um, and um, and a lot of wonderful friends in this program. So I go to meetings, I do the steps, I connect with the guys in my Thursday night group, and I started getting involved in the Native culture a lot. Like I said, I think I said anyway, I spent a lot of time with George's family up on White Earth and Red Lake, and um, went to started going to a thing called the Wild Rice Roundup, which is a god awful, horrible time of the year to have an AA roundup up on White Earth Indian Reservation, White Earth Nation, in January. We go up there and freeze and jumpstart cars after the conference is over with. Spend 3 days together and just have an incredible time. Um, and and sort of uh, use those roundups. I also go to the one in Red Cliff when you're having it, and it's a really an incredible time for me to be able to listen to some great speakers and some um, develop some wonderful friendships and to continue some wonderful friendships. And so I get up there as I get up to primarily White Earth as much as possible because I have some property there that I like to go and hang out at. I don't own it; a friend of mine does. Bud, a guy who I was in the halfway house with, we've been friends ever since. I go out there and I walk and not very far because I don't like walking that much, but I do like being in the bush and I find that I can be fully myself there. That I am alone, but not lonely. I'm not empty because I go there and I'll lean up against a tree and sit for a while and just try to feel you know, the the energy flowing up from the roots of that tree, and trying to connect my spine to the spine of that tree, And I have other things that I do too. I put my asema down like I do every morning, and um, try to say my little prayer in my pitiful Ojibwe, and uh, try to connect. So anyway, I think I'm gonna start to close this thing up a little bit. So um, how am I doing on the questions? Well, I got as far as why am I here and who am I? I think I bored you enough with that. But where am I going is a tougher one because now I'm uh, facing kind of a formal retirement. And what's been so good about this whole COVID thing is that, especially for you guys that are working your asses off now, full time work and all that stuff, trying to, um, what this whole COVID thing is doing for you guys is finding out what it's like to be retired. And for me, when I first lost my job and I wasn't going in every day to teach and be with the kids, um, I'd wake up in the morning and go, okay, well, uh, now that my life isn't worth a shit anymore, because I had put so much effort and energy and work and psychic pain into that job, that when I was without the job, there I am sitting in the backyard smoking my little cigars, going, man, is my life worth a shit anymore? So anyway, this COVID thing I think is going to help a lot of people sort of come to grips with that question, don't you think? Um, and so where am I going? After I have some plans. I've been asked to do a workshop, and we were supposed to do it next weekend up in Battle Lake, Minnesota. There's a wonderful dance company up there that I was going to play music for and do some workshops with, and we had to cancel it, of course, because of this whole plague. And so we're going to probably do it in the fall. I'm looking forward to that. Um, we're also doing, hopefully, a Red Road Warriors roundup. I hope. And I don't know what the score is on that, but I guess it's on hold until now. And you know what? I'm going to spend some time here. We've got a really nice home, which I never thought I would ever have. Never. Um, for a guy who 37 years ago was sleeping on his sister's couch in Stevens Court in South Minneapolis, and hadn't eaten for 5 days. Um, this is pretty good. I got it pretty good right now, and I've got lots of projects that I'm working on, and I spend a lot of time right now. Actually, it's pretty cool doing Zoom meetings with not only my AA friends here in Minneapolis and Red Lake and elsewhere, but I'm also part of an international organization of musicians who play live music for dance, and um, so I've got that. And oh, hey, part of this whole COVID thing has uh, put me in a place where I've dug out my old fly fishing stuff. So I'm going to go out and maybe do some naked fly fishing or something. I don't know. Who knows? I'm an old hippie. We don't wear clothes. Um, but anyway, I want to close with something that's really uh, important. No, no, it's not important. It really speaks to me. And I have to be really careful about doing this because I'm a trained performer and have been since I was like 5. Um, Singing. I saw Mommy kissing Santa Claus at the American Legion Club when I was 4 or 5 years old. But anyway, what I want to do is close with this because it's kind of an ode to you guys, um, and I hope this connects to you. It's called Colors by a Russian poet by the name of Yevgeny Yevtushenko. Boy, there's a mouthful, huh? I've changed a couple of the words in it, so only to make it plural rather than singular, because it is kind of a love poem. When your faces appeared over my crumpled life, at first I understood only the poverty of what I had. Then its particular light on woods, on rivers, on the sea, became my beginning in the colored world in which I had not yet had my beginning. I am so frightened, I am so frightened of the unexpected sunrise finishing, of revelations and tears and the excitement finishing. I don't fight it. My love is this fear. I nourish it. Who can nourish nothing? Love's slipshod watchman. Fear hems me in. Fear hems me in. I am so conscious that these minutes are short and that the colors in my eyes will vanish when your faces set. Giga Wabman Nakuch.